How are you guys doing? Today is Saturday, August 7th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do a GOAT profile on Mike Trout. The gold standard roughly for five tool athletes in baseball turns 30 today, and with this episode of The Elite, I plan on going through all the accolades, achievements, and just what he's been able to accomplish from the moment where he hit the spotlight as a teenager, taking over all of baseball, to where he is right now as a player who most recently signed one of the richest contracts in North American sports history. So if you're unfamiliar with Mike Trout, he is the center fielder for the Los Angeles Angels. He is a five-tool athlete. Don't get me wrong. Don't quote me on the tools, but of course, he's a contact hitter. He hits very well with power. He's very fast. He can field, and of course, he has a great arm. So of course, he can play he is one of the best defensive outfielders in the game, as well as one of the best hitting outfielders as well. He's one of the best athletes in the sport. He's shown a level of consistency that has not been seen since arguably Albert Pujols' prime, or even Barry Bonds, dare I even say. And he's going to go down as one of the legends of the sport, as he is just entering his 30s today. And just to give a little bit of background, just to give a sense of give a sense of where he's coming from. He's originally from Vineland, New Jersey. He would eventually get drafted out of high school, and he would eventually get drafted with the pick that the Angels got from the Yankees when they signed Teixeira. They would get the 25th overall pick in the 2009 MLB draft. This would be the same draft where Steven Strasburg was taken number 1. And it would not take Mike Trout that long to make it to the pros, as he would officially make his MLB debut for the Angels in the 2011 season. In the 2011 season, he would end up playing 40 games in the season, where the Los Angeles Angels would end up finishing with the second best record in the American League West. He would not go down as an official rookie for the season, but in the 40 games he played, he finished with 27 hits, finishing with 20 runs, 5 home runs, 16 RBIs, finishing with a .220 batting average and a .672 OPS, as he was getting more accustomed to at least the speed and the pace of the MLB around him. In his first full season in Los Angeles, the season after his debut, his official rookie season, he would play 139 games in a season where the Los Angeles Angels would finish with an 89-73 record. They would have 3 more wins in the previous season, but they would still miss the playoffs. In the regular season, Mike Trout will go on to win the Rookie of the Year in the American League, and he would be the runner-up in the MVP race, in a race that saw Miguel Cabrera take home the title. In 2012, Mike Trout would, in those 139 games that he would play in the season that they would miss the playoffs, he would finish with 182 hits, which is 43 more hits than games played. He finished with 129 runs on the season, which would lead the American League. And the fact that he did it in his rookie season, of course, was setting the bar incredibly high, especially that early. He had 27 doubles on the year, 30 home runs, 83 RBIs. He would lead the American League in steals as well, as he had 49. He has never had as many steals in a season ever. And to mention, he's never had that many runs either after his rookie season as well. He will go on to lead the league at OPS plus as well, which is just a graded OPS in terms of compared to the average. And he would go on to be named to an All-Star in his very first season. And of course, he was named a Silver Slugger as well. And of course, after that first year, many people knew who Mike Trout was. Of course, he was on many people's radars. And of course, taking home the American League and Rookie of the Year is no tough feat. He would also go on to be a member of the 30-30 Club for the only time in his career. That was the season in which he did it. And he would go home with the Wilson Defensive Player of the Year award as well, which goes to the best all-around defender. And that was just his rookie season. Many people were in awe of what they had been seeing, and he set the bar for himself every single year from that year on out. His second full season in his age 21 season in 2013, he would play 157 games for a Los Angeles Angels team that finished with a 78-84 record. They had won 11 less games in the previous season. But Mike Trout in that season would finish with 190 hits in the 157 games he played. So he had more hits in the previous season. That would be a career high. And even to this date, he's never finished with more hits than he had in his age 21 season, with 190. He would go on to lead the American League in runs for the second year in a row, as he had 109. The second year in a row, he had at least 100 runs, which is an incredibly tough feat to do. He finished with 27 home runs alongside 97 RBIs. That 97 RBIs up until that point would be his career. It would be his career high at that point. He would finish with 33 stolen bases. That would be the second year in a row he finished with at least 30 stolen bases. He would get caught stealing 7 times, which is tied for his career high. He would lead the American League in walks for the first time in his career, as he had 110 this year. This year, he'd finished with a 323 batting average, which is roughly around what he did the previous year. He had a 326. He would finish with a 988 OPS, which at that point became his career high. He would be named an All-Star for the second year in a row. He would win the Silver Slugger for the outfield position, and he would be the runner-up to Miguel Cabrera in the MVP voting for the second year in a row. But, of course, many people knew who Mike Trout was, and they knew that this dude was completely serious. And then, of course, also in 2013, he would also hit for the cycle as well, which would be another check off the box. And that would just get him one step closer to the player he would be in his third season in the league. So in his first 2 seasons in the league, of course, by then he was a 2-time All-Star, 2-time Silver Slugger, 2-time MVP runner-up. And then in his third season with the Los Angeles Angels in 2024, in his age 22 season, he would go on to win the American League MVP after playing 157 games with a Los Angeles Angels team that would go on to win the American League West with a 98-64 record. This was actually the only year that the Angels made the playoffs with Mike Trout in their lineup. And in this particular season, in the 157 games he played, Mike Trout finished with 173 hits. This would be the third season in a row where, of course, he finished a full season with more hits than games played. He had 16 more hits than games played. He had 115 runs on the season. This would be the third season in a row where he led the American League in runs. And, of course, the third season in a row, he had at least 100. He would go on to finish with 39 doubles on the season, which tied him with the previous season for the most doubles he's ever put together in a season, even until today, with 39. He finished with 9 triples on the season, which also ties him with the year before for the most triples he's ever put together in a season, with 9. Or like I said, he would finish with 36 home runs and 111 RBIs. At that point, those were both career highs, and even to this day, he's never put up more RBIs than he has in his first MVP season. He would go on to steal 16 bases as his stolen bases would drop below 30 for the first time. He would go on to lead the American League in strikeouts. This is the only time in his career he would ever lead the league in strikeouts. He finished with a 287 batting average and a 939 OPS. This would be the third year in a row his OPS was above 900. And, of course, the third year in a row, he had a batting average of at least 280, which is incredibly amazing. He would lead the American League in total bases in the only year he would do so. He would be named an All-Star for the third year in a row, as well as being a Silver Slugger for the third year in a row. And he would win MVP, as, of course, he willed the Angels to the playoffs, winning it over second-place Victor Martinez of the Detroit Tigers. And once they made the playoffs, they would eventually lose. They would get swept in the divisional series by the Royals, who ended up going to the World Series and losing to the San Francisco Giants that year. But of course, that by the time Mike Trout made the playoffs for the only time in his career, he was a 22-year-old MVP. So this leads us to his third year in Anaheim, because of course, I guess we're not counting his debut season where he played 40 games. But going into his fourth game, he would go on to play 159 games for a Los Angeles Angels team that finished with an 85-77 record. They had won 13 less games than the previous season, and of course, they missed the playoffs. In those games, Mike Trout would go on to finish with 172 hits in those 159 games. This would be the fourth season in a row he finished with more hits than games played. This time he had 13 more hits than games played. He finished with 104 runs in those 159 games. This would be the fourth season in a row he had at least 100 runs, which is still incredible considering whatever. I'll continue that because he does it again. He would go on to hit 32 doubles. This will be his third season in a row with at least 30 doubles on the season. He had 6 triples. This will be the fourth season in a row he had at least 5 triples on a season. He had 41 home runs, which up until that point was a career high, alongside 90 RBIs. This will be the third season in a row he had at least 90 RBIs on a season. He finished with 11 stolen bases. He would finish with a .299 batting average. He would lead the American League in slugging percentage for the first time in his career at .590. And alongside that, he would lead the American League in on-base plus slugging percentage and OPS for the first time in his career, finishing with a .991 OPS, which at that point was a career high for him. He would go on to win. He would be named an All-Star for his fourth year in a row in his fourth season in the league. He will be named a Silver Slugger for the fourth time in his fourth year in the league, and he would be named the MVP runner-up to Josh Donaldson when Josh Donaldson won it in Toronto. So, of course, in his first 4 seasons in the league, he was in the top 2 of MVP voting all 4 years. But, of course, following his age 23 season, he would be back in Los Angeles, and to finish his first half-decade in Los Angeles, he would go on to play 159 games in a season where the Angels would finish with a 74-88 record. They had won 11 less games than they had the previous season, but of course Mike Trout will go on to win the American League MVP for the second time in his career, of course showing that when he won it the first time it was no fluke. And of course by then he had already won the All-Star Game MVP for 2014 and 2015. He hadn't won it since then. But of course, following those 2 years, he would go on to win the MVP. In the 159 games he played, he finished with 173 hits. This would be the 5th season in a row in his first 5 seasons where he would finish with more hits than games played, which is a very tough feat to do consistently. The fact that for the first 5 years, that was the standard that he set is virtually unheard of. He would lead the American League in runs for the 4th time in his first 5 seasons in the league, as he had 123 of them. That would be the last time in his career, at least to date, that he's led the American League in runs scored. He finished with 32 doubles. The 4th season in a row, he had at least 30 doubles. He had 5 triples, which up until this point was the least amount of triples he had in a season, but the 5th season in a row that he had at least 5 triples. He had 29 home runs on the season alongside 100 RBIs. This would be the 4th season in a row that Mike Trout had at least 90 RBIs in a season. This would be the second time in his career that he had at least 100. He finished with 30 stolen bases for the 3rd time in his career. He has not finished with 30 stolen bases in a season since 2016. He would lead the American League in walks for the 2nd time in his career, as he had done so. That was the 2nd time since 2013. He would go on to finish with a .315 batting average. The 3rd full season in his career, he had at least a batting average of at least 300. He would finish with an OBP of .441, leading the American League, the first time he led the American League in on-base percentage. And he would finish with a .991 OPS, which was tied with his career high at the time, finishing with leading the American League in OPS plus for the 3rd time in his career. And I guess the best way to understand that stat metric is that the average player is 100. So if your OPS is like 150, you're doing 50 you're hitting 50 points better than the average player in OPS. But regardless, Alongside that, he would be named an All-Star for the 5th time in his first half decade in the league. He would be named a Silver Slugger for the 5th time. He would be in the top 2 of MVP voting for the 5th time, as well as he was named the MVP of the league despite the Angels not even making the playoffs. And that was in his age 24 season. And that would transition us to his age 25 season, his 6th season with the Angels. He would go on to play 114 games in a season that was that was kind of plagued by injury. In 2017, he would end up going down. He undergo a thumb surgery, and then he had revealed that the MRI revealed that it was a torn ulnar collateral ligament. So until he was, even despite the fact that he was playing 40 less games than he had in a regular season, of course, his standard would not waver. In his age 25 season, Mike Trout would finish with 123 hits in 114 games, continuing his 6-year streak of finishing with more hits than games played. He finished with 92 runs in those 114 games, so he was very close to keeping his 100-run streak alive, but 90 is still incredibly high. He would finish with 25 doubles, which would be his career low at that point, but not by much. He had 33 home runs, which wasn't his career low. That would end up being the 4th time in his career he had at least 30 home runs in a season. He had 72 RBIs, which up until then, which even now for a full season has been Mike Trout's career low. He would finish with a 306 batting average, which would be the 4th time in his career he finished with a 300 batting average. The 2nd year in a row he did so. He would finish with an on-base percentage of .442. This would be the 3rd season in a row and the 4th time in his career he finished with an on-base percentage above .400. He would lead the league in slugging percentage as well with a 629 slugging percentage. The 2nd time he's led the American League, and the 1st time he's done so with a slugging percentage of over 600. And this would be the 1st time he actually led the American League in on-base percentage and slugging percentage independently. And he would lead the league in OPS for the 2nd time in his career, topping 1,000. He had a OPS of 1,071 with an OPS plus of 186, which would also be the highest of his career. With all of that, despite finishing with the best OPS, the best hitting metrics, he would go on to be named an All-Star for the 6th consecutive season in his career. And he would go on to being named 4th in an MVP race that ended up seeing Jose Altuve take home the hardware. But following that, of course, the Angels did not make the playoffs, as in 2017. They finished with an 80-82 record, winning 60 more games than the year before, with the 2nd-best record in their division. But, of course, that would lead us into Mike Trout's 7th full season with the Los Angeles Angels, his age 26 season in 2018. And in that season, he would play 140 games in a season where the Angels would finish with an 80-82 record for the 2nd consecutive year. But this time, instead of finishing 2nd in the division, they finished 4th. This is the year that Shohei Ohtani won Rookie of the Year in the American League, for context. And in that season, Mike Trout would finish with 147 hits in 140 games, continuing his 7-season streak of more hits than games played. He finished with 101 runs on the season, making it the 6th season in his first 7 in which he finished with at least 100 runs on the year. He had 24 doubles on the season alongside 39 home runs and 79 RBIs. He would finish with 122 doubles, which would lead the American League for the 3rd time in his career. He has not led the league in walks since, but that was the 3rd time in which he did it. He would finish with a .312 batting average, which would be the 3rd season in a row, and that would be the 5th season up until that moment in which he had finished with a batting average above 300. He would finish with a .460 on-base percentage, which would be the 4th season in a row, and the 5th time in his first 7 years in which he had finished with an on-base percentage above 400. This would be the 3rd season in a row he led the American League, and he would finish with a .628 slugging percentage. He would finish with an OPS of 1088, leading the American League for the second year in a row and for the third time in the in that 4-season span. He would lead the American League in OPS plus for the fourth consecutive season with a 198 OPS plus. And if you understand what OPS plus is, a 198 OPS plus means he's basically twice as good as he's playing, and that's some phenomenal numbers that he's hitting. And he was also intentionally walked the most times in the American League, and at 25 times, he's never been walked more. He will be named an All-Star for the 7th year in a row in his first 7 seasons. He will be named a Silver Slugger for the 6th time in his first 7 years. He will be named. He would be top 2 in MVP votes for the 6th time in his first 7 years in the league. As this year, the MVP will go to Mookie Betts before he brought the trophy home to Boston to give a sense of where he was. But of course, that's still just to show that Mike Trout was the golden standard, that the players that ended up beating him for the MVP were virtuoso seasons. And this is just a regular run-of-the-mill season for Mike Trout. Following that, this would lead to Mike Trout's 8th season with the Los Angeles Angels, his age 27 season. He would go on to play 134 games in a season where the Angels went 72-90. But despite the Angels not making the playoffs again, in 2019, Mike Trout will go on to win the American League MVP for the 3rd time in his career. In the 134 games he played, he finished with 137 hits, continuing his 8-season streak of having more hits than games played in the MLB. He finished with 110 runs. This would be the 7th time in his career he's finished with at least 100 runs. He actually hasn't done so again in an MLB season to date. He finished with 27 doubles on the season. He had 45 home runs, which till now is the most home runs he's ever put up in a season. He finished with 104 RBIs, the 3rd time in his career he's had at least 100 RBIs in a season. He would finish with a 291 batting average. He would lead the American League in on-base percentage with 438. This would be the 4th year in a row he's led the American League in on-base percentage. He would lead the American League in slugging percentage at 645. That would be the 3rd time in that 5-year stretch that he had led the league in that statistic. And he would finish with a 1083 OPS. That would be the 4th time in that 5-year stretch in which he led the league in on-base percentage. He finished with leading the league in OPS for the 5th consecutive year at 180, and he would be intentionally walked 14 times, the most times in the American League. He will be named an All-Star for the 8th consecutive season in his MLB career. He will be named a Silver Slugger, and at this point, that will be his 7th time being named, and he will be named the MVP as well. As, of course, in 2019, Mike Trout, there was not much better you could do. And he will go on to be named to the first ever All-MLB first team, as in addition to being given the Hank Aaron Award. That would be the 2nd of his career. And, of course, that transitions us into the 2020 season, which many people are aware of was heavily impacted by COVID to the point where the 162-game season had to get shortened to 60 games, but they expanded the playoffs from 4 teams in each league to 8. And in this shortened season, Mike Trout would go on to play 53 games in a season where the Los Angeles Angels would finish with a 26-34 record and still miss the extended playoffs with the 3rd best record in the American League West. In the 53 games he played, Mike Trout finished with 56 hits. That would continue his 9-season streak, excluding his debut season, in which he finished with more hits than games played. He had 41 runs in the 53 games, finishing with 9 doubles, 2 triples, 17 home runs with 46 RBIs in those 53 games. He would finish with a 281 batting average, a 390 on-base percentage, ending his 5-season streak of an on-base percentage with over 400. He finished with a 603 slugging percentage, continuing his 4-season streak of having a slugging percentage over 600. Then he would finish with a 993 OPS. He would go on to win the Silver Slugger, he would go on to be named the Silver Slugger for the 8th time in his career. And even though they didn't officially name All-Stars, he would finish 5th in an MVP race that saw Jose Abreu of the Chicago White Sox take home the trophy. And that, of course, would lead us to this current season that he's playing right now with the Los Angeles Angels. And so far, the season has kind of been a tricky one. In his age 29 season, in which he's turning 30 now, he at the moment is dealing with a calf injury. He strained his calf in May. He was transferred to the 60-day to the 60-day injured list in June, so it's possible he may come back before the end of the season. But so far, he has played 36 games, finishing with 39 hits in those 36 games, continuing his now 10-year streak of at least playing with more hits than games played. He has 23 runs in those 36 games, 8 home runs alongside 18 RBIs. And at the moment, he has a .333 batting average alongside a .466 on-base percentage and a .624 slugging with a .1090 OPS in the 36 games that he's playing. So, of course, the metrics are there. And even though he's played 36 games, Mike Trout was named an All-Star for the 9th time in his career. And this is his 10th year in the league with all the injuries, the ups and downs, the fact that the Angels have only made the playoffs one time in the 10-year stretch of him being there. And he's been named an All-Star 3 times. Not to mention he was named to the first team All-MLB the first 2 years that they've had it because he was named during the 60-game season. Everything more that I say is just a testament to how great and how one-of-a-kind Mike Trout really is as a talent, especially in American sports. Because we like to kind of compare players across sports, and I think it's very difficult to do so with a player that's like Mike Trout. And with that said, I can't wait to see what he does, and hopefully by this time next year I'll have more to talk about. We'll see hopefully if he stays with the Los Angeles Angels, because he did sign an insane contract, but I mean he could still get traded. But with that, I imagine he wants to stay there, but time will tell. With that said, I want to thank Pro Baseball Reference. I want to thank the MLB and the ESPN websites for giving me the facts and figures that I needed in order to do this episode. I, of course, want to wish Mike Trout a happy 30th birthday. He is currently wearing number 27 for the Los Angeles Angels, if you haven't really got a chance to watch him. And if you do, please. And with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to all 27 minutes of this. I hope all is well. And like I said, hopefully by this time next year, I'll have more to talk about as Mike Trout is possibly going to show the world in the games that he plays why he is highly regarded by many as quite possibly one of the best baseball players that the world has ever seen. Thanks for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and peace out. I'll catch you tomorrow.